at the end of the day, finding the most value for the work that you're doing, you have to be an entrepreneur. It's like, high risk, high reward, right? The odds of you getting absolutely no value for all the work that you did is actually quite high. At the same time, if it works out, then you're going to be, you're going to earn significantly more than you could have as an employee somewhere. If you're taking money from somebody, like some people compare it to a marriage. In theory, I could leave my wife. Like, I can't leave the investors, right? There's much more legally binding than a marriage.
I've known Chris since the very start of my own entrepreneurial journey back in 2020. Back then, SwiftSkew was hardly more than an idea, and Yellow Card was still a tiny startup with the founders working out of their apartment with the walls covered in sticky notes. Chris has been a wonderful mentor to me and my co-founder, and I hope that bringing him onto the podcast will let some of his wisdom out into the world for young entrepreneurs everywhere to learn from. He's taken an unconventional approach to company building, and if nothing else, I'd like to share his unique story to show that there might be more ways to make it big than we might think. To start us off, Chris, could you tell us the Taco Bell story for the millionth time?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Well, good to be here, sir. Thank you for having me on. The Taco Bell story, man. So I think
it's famous at this point.
So I think, I got to give some background in order to get to Taco Bell. But
sure, let's hear it.
So basically, the entrepreneurial journey for this company started back in, essentially 2013. So that's when I first got into Bitcoin and crypto. So my now co-founder at the time was the guy that got me in, right? And so Justin is 6'7", very sweaty, and just would be at college parties evangelizing the gospel of Bitcoin. And so got me in, quite early into the space. And then by 2015, we were fully down the rabbit hole. And, we sort of, the way that we got started was I saw Bitcoin being sold on eBay and for about 150% markup, right? Bitcoin at the time was like $150, $100. People were selling it for, 300 plus on eBay. And I sent the link to Justin and I said, man, I know how to do eBay. You know how to do Bitcoin. Let's make some freaking money. And so we listed Bitcoin on eBay. And within the first week, we did $40,000 in sales, right? At 100% margin. So this is, more money than I've ever seen in my life, right? I'm going to call my mom, tell her I'm dropping out of school. I'm going to sell magic internet money for the rest of my life. And that's when I learned what a credit card chargeback is. So
way.
What we thought was like the best business of all time was actually just a bunch of dudes in Russia and India that were running cards that they stole and then, taking the Bitcoin, and then the owner of the card would charge it back. So, so that sucked. It was not a great experience. And after that, through some combination of insanity and intuition, decided, hey, we still love the space. We want to do something in the space. And so we put our collective brains together and we said, we're going to accept the only irreversible payment method known to man, which is cold, hard cash. And so we started putting out ads that basically said, hey, we have Bitcoin, come, meet up with us and give us cash and we'll give you the Bitcoin. And people started responding to these ads. And so we did the only thing that two reasonable college students in our position would do, which is every Wednesday you could come to the Taco Bell on Gay Street in Auburn, Alabama. You could find Justin and I eating our Doritos Locos Taco 12-pack, and you could slap a couple $100 cash on the table and we'd scan your QR code and give you Bitcoin. And I will say, though, this operation worked perfectly at Taco Bell, right? This would have never worked at a Chick-fil-A. And this was meant for Taco Bell. And so, basically we started doing that. We did that for about 2 weeks, and then we were like, well, shit, this is working. So we start calling up friends at LSU, Yale, Georgia, Alabama, anywhere that we knew somebody from high school. And within about 3 weeks, we had 7 Taco Bells on the Eastern United States, all within college campuses where you could walk in and buy Bitcoin. And so we did that for about 2.5 months before deciding that this is way too sketchy and unscalable. And, sort of birthed the original idea of Yellow Card out of, well, how do you turn this into something that's actually scalable?
That's a great story. I love it. It gets more interesting every time. Every time I get to hear like a different part. Like I didn't know about how sweaty Justin was, like pushing.
He's very sweaty.
Bitcoin.
That's a sweaty guy, dude. That's
sweaty dude. Oh man, I bet he's gonna love hearing all about that. Yeah. So
no, he knows. He calls me short, and I call him sweaty. That's the
deal.
That's the trade-off. I am 6'5" for anybody watching. And if you meet Justin before you meet me, he'll tell you that I'm like 5'2". I can't tell you how many people I've met that have just been like, wow, you're a lot taller than Justin said you were.
Were there any situations that made you feel like really sketchy, like at the beginning, like doing things that don't scale in hindsight? Were there anything that happened that was like, oh man, like I might lose my life for this Bitcoin right now? Like, were you ever threatened? Did anything bad happen to you or any of the people involved in it when it was like cold hard cash at first?
No. I mean, we had we were going through like a legitimate website, right? I mean, you had to, there was certain verification and everything that you had to do. So it's not, I mean, we were not dealing with like random people on Craigslist or something, right? So it wasn't, we weren't that cowboy. That being said, though, I mean, in terms of losing Bitcoin, I mean, the amount of money in hindsight that we lost in the early days through either stupidity or actually mostly stupidity. Yeah. Is, I mean, pretty wild, right? I mean, we have a CPU that popped, right? I mean, just the computer, we were mining Ethereum, the rig caught on fire and, like with 300 Ethereum completely unbacked up on it.
No.
Right? We had a hot wallet that we were using and we didn't put 2FA on it because we were like, oh, well, we don't need 2FA because both of us are logging in. So like if we have 2FA, it's going to be, an issue. And long story short, somebody else got in, stole 21.8 Bitcoin from us. That one sucked. And so, sometimes every once in a while, you do the math on like some of the, I mean, look, in the early days, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I would lose like, a lot of, Doge or this or that. Right. I mean, with, crypto and everything, like none of it mattered. None of it was worth anything. And like, yeah, in hindsight, it's one of those things where sometimes you do the math and it's like, oh, wow, I'd sure like to have 21.8 Bitcoin right now. Like, that'd be sick if I had an extra 21 Bitcoin.
Yeah, that'd be great. No, I don't think it would hurt anybody.
No. So.
I know you'd mentioned that you were selling them on eBay at first. I also was like looking and I was like, I think we talked about this before, but I saw this on your LinkedIn and was like blown away. You have like selling Pokemon cards on eBay for like 9 years before Yellow Card. I know a bunch of different founders who, myself included, who sold things on like eBay in their teen years to like, make a buck and like start off their entrepreneurial journey that way. Would love to hear like how you got into it, like the story behind that.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I got into it the way that probably anybody else that's selling Pokemon cards on the internet gets into it, which is you are collecting and then you say, hey, Mom, can you buy me this? And then she says, no, I don't, like, obviously not. And then it's like, well, shit, I guess I got to figure out how to make money now. So, they got into it the old fashioned way, right? I will say though, man, that is one that I was 10 years too early on. For anybody that does not track it, over the last 3 years, Pokemon has outperformed Bitcoin. And everybody knows what Bitcoin has done over the past 3 years. So you can imagine, like that market for cards has just, I mean, gone absolutely ballistic. The investments, because I do still invest in Pokemon, the investments that I've made in like sealed products and things like that on Pokemon have outperformed my Bitcoin in over the course of like pretty much the same amount of time. That market has 1000x'd over the past 10 years. It's wild how popular it's gotten. And yeah, I mean, when I was doing this, there were people doing it, and like, you know, there were a number of, you know, sellers, and you had shops and you had all that, but you didn't have that many. And now, I mean, there is a full market now, man. I mean, there are, I mean, you know, you have like Whatnot and all these other companies that have popped up that have, I mean, you know, $1 billion valuations just like doing Pokemon, right? Like, I mean, like, you know, Whatnot is for, I mean, you know, cards in general, but it's Pokemon in practice, right? And like, yeah, it's crazy, man. Like that ecosystem has developed in such a wild way over the past like several years.
You heard it here first, folks. Take all your money out of Yellow Card and put it all in Pokemon.
Put it in a Pokemon, dude. Just go buy sealed products, man.
That's so funny. That's crazy. Well, it might be a good time to maybe share just a little bit about what it is that Yellow Card does, like why you decided to start like Yellow Card, like back in the day, like what compelled you to become a founder and like become an entrepreneur. Like, what do you think it is within you that led to that start?
I think I'm just fundamentally broken. I mean, I don't know why anybody else starts a company. No, I mean, I think, you know, look, it's something that from a young age I knew that I wanted to do, right? Not Yellow Card specifically, but, you know, like, as sort of the entrepreneurial journey and all of that. And so, you know, from a young age, you know, like the, you know, Pokemon and everything that started in what, 5th grade, right? So, I mean, you know, it's something that I've always had in me. I've always been sort of a self-starter, you know, able to, you know, work and like accomplish goals, accomplish goals sort of on my own. I think all of that is pretty critical. And the idea of working for somebody else disgusts me. And so, you know, combination of all of that. Yeah, I think, you know, that's really what led to it, right? I think you know, the way that I see it, I'm far better at being an entrepreneur than I would be at being an employee. I feel like I'd be a very bad employee. Cause like, if I was working for you and you were like, oh, hey, go do this, I would just be like, no, that's dumb. I'm going to like do this other thing. Like, so, yeah. And so, I mean, you know, it's one of those things that's just always been there. It's always been in me. Tried a number of things, right? I was doing a number of things. I mean, you know, Pokemon was the one that worked, right? But I did a number of other things. I did a lot of writing. I did a lot of SEO, especially, I mean, like at the time when people were actually starting to care about that. Obviously, the beauty of the internet is you don't have to, you know, tell anybody how old you are, right? So you can be like 15 writing articles for, you know, ghostwriting for CNN, and nobody's IDing you. And so, yeah, I was doing a lot of ghostwriting, a lot of like SEO stuff like that, like optimization, SEO writing, blogs, all that. Obviously, this was before ChatGPT, right? Where, you know, now, you know, now nobody needs me to generate slop, right? But yeah, I think, I mean, that for me, that was really the start, right? And it was always around like, how do I make enough money that I don't need to go get a job, right? I don't want to go work at like Walmart, you know, like checking people out, or like go bus tables or anything like that.
Yeah.
I will find a different way to be able to support myself. And then, yeah, I mean, Yellow Card is, you know, sort of the first, how do you say, adult company that,
yeah,
you know, yeah.
I feel the same way about SwiftSkew. Like there was like a number of startups, some that even brought like real money, but like SwiftSkew is like the first one where I'm like to the moon, like really giving them my
Yes.
all. So that's what I refer to as my first real company.
Yeah, it's an adult company. Yeah.
Yeah, adult company, grown up stuff. Yeah. Was writing instrumental in your success with Yellow Card? Like was that helpful at the very beginning?
I think, I mean, I am biased here, but I think that writing is one of the most fundamentally important skills that like you as a human can develop to be successful in life. And I think that like writing, like being really good at writing plays into so much else, right? Writing is it's more than just like, putting words on paper, right? It is storytelling, it is critical thinking, it is crafting a narrative, it is, all of these things, right? And a lot of that, like, look, there's a reason that in the US, most politicians are lawyers, right? And have like law backgrounds. Because when you're going through law school, all you do is write, right? You're writing papers, you're writing, arguments, you're writing this, you're writing that. And like getting really good at writing is what helps you, like that more than anything is what helps you. When you think about it from like an entrepreneurial standpoint, that's how you craft a pitch. You are writing when you are crafting a pitch. When you are, presenting your company, you are writing, right? When you are, selling, you are writing, right? Like there's like for all this stuff, you are taking a central theme, which is the company, and then you are crafting the narrative depending on the audience, right? So if it's an investor, then, we're going to talk more about growth and we're going to talk about revenue and we're going to talk about, this and that. If it's a customer, then we're going to talk more about like the technology, the features, the ease of use, how, inexpensive it is and comparisons and all that. Yeah, like writing is what builds that muscle, I think, for so many people. And I think, as you think about the impact of AI, right? And the impact of like some of this new technology, I think that one of the things that I am most concerned about for like sort of the next generation up is that with AI, there is no longer a reason to write. There's really not. Like, there's not a reason to learn writing for like the average person, right? Because if you're in school and you need to do a book report, like, dog, by the time I finish this sentence, I can have like a 5-page, like book report on Confederacy of Dunces in, perfect, like MLA format and, everything else, right? I don't need to know how to do any of that anymore. And yeah, I think that's one thing that like, I think people look at writing as like a specific skill, but it actually impacts so much more of the way that you think. And I was fortunate enough to go to a high school that, pounded that into our brains.
Yeah, I think writing teaches you how to think. And
yes.
So like the iteration process that you can do with like written word versus spoken word, like that iteration is like real refinement. And so yes. Like I give writing a lot of credit for our success early on. I now do more writing personally than I do like for work, if you will. I mean, still like there's like a lot of writing that goes into it, but yeah, I feel like writing is like a key like entrepreneurial skill.
100%, right? And to your point, right? It's about like the other thing, like, and I mean, this was again, like from like a high school standpoint, one of the things they just, really hit into our heads was like, when you are writing something, it should be perfect. Like it should come out essentially flawless, right? Like if you and I are sitting here talking and we're going back and forth, after this, like I might, later tonight, I might be like, oh, I should have said that, or I should have said this or that or whatever. Writing, unless you are, unless you're like, I don't know, a journalist trying to churn out like a breaking news story, like if you are writing a long form essay, book, whatever, that's not something you should be doing the night before. right? You need at least 2 days to write it because give it 1 day to write it, 1 day to, think about everything that you messed up and redo it, right? But you need at least 2 days to write anything long form. I mean, obviously books and stuff like that would take a lot longer, but in theory, right, at least 2 days. And, on the first day you go through, you're just, trauma dumping your thoughts onto the page. And then on the second day, you're able to go through and it's like, okay, well, actually, I shouldn't have said that, right? I should have said this. I need to include a paragraph on this, things like that. I mean, shit, even right now, we're working on like a document, and it was 11 pages. Now it's 15 pages, right? Because the first iteration was 11 pages, and then there's 4 pages of other stuff that like we went back as a team, and it's like, oh no, actually, we need to add this. We need to add this. So it's one of those things that like written word, I think, like if you respect written word the way that you should in terms of like your own writing process, it should come out nearly flawless in that you should have said everything that you wanted to say. So, yeah.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah. I like that. I think I agree with you. I think that's one of the most powerful tools for sure. You'd mentioned there was like a number of different reasons for like why you became a founder. Like, do you think you could point to like one specific event or reason in your life that led you down this path? Like what made you take this journey of pain?
I don't know if there's anything specific. I mean, look, my mom is a CPA. I watched her for years work for the same company, and be undervalued, right? In terms of the work that she does. I mean, look, I mean, I watched for years during tax season. She gets up at 3 a.m. after going to bed at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. right, like, and just grinds. And like, yeah, and like watching that be undervalued, I think was part of it, right? Where like I don't ever want to be in that position where like my skills or what I bring to the table is undervalued. And obviously, look, like there's the good and the bad of it. I mean, like she has been basically with the same company her whole life, which is obviously that's not the best way. I mean, look, I don't want to, like that's not the best way to grow your earnings, right? I think that people know that now, that the best way to grow your earnings is kind of, how do you say, like bouncing off the, like Spider-Manning off the walls as you climb up, right, company to company. But like, I think there's something to be said for like the loyalty, right? And I think that like the loyalty is something that is largely gone with this generation. This generation being our generation and also younger generations, like millennial and down. I don't think like you don't have that loyalty anymore. Which, look, I mean, there's all, I mean, I get it. Like, yeah, if a company's not valuing you, then, you should go somewhere else. At the same time, there is something beautiful about building for the long term, right? And like, hopping company to company is, maybe a good way to earn more money, but like, you're not building something for the long term, right? You're just sort of a hired mercenary at that point. And so it was some combination of the two where it's like, I want to be able to build something that like, really like from the ground up and really like be transformative in that process. But at the same time, I want to make sure that like my skills are properly valued, for, what I know that I'm able to bring to the table.
So you wanted to get the most leverage from like your work. Is that like a good summary?
I think so. I mean, look, frankly, I mean, at the end of the day, like finding the most value for the work that you're doing, you have to be an entrepreneur. At the same time, being an entrepreneur is also the best way to get absolutely no value for the work that you're doing, right? So
right.
It's like, high risk, high reward, right? Like, the odds of you getting absolutely no value for all the work that you did is actually quite high. And at the same time, if it works out, then you're going to be, you're going to earn significantly more than you could have as, as an employee somewhere.
Yeah. With the cost of like just higher risk profile. But
Yes,
when you're
with the
young,
cost of giving up giving up years of your life to stress.
yeah, yeah, I definitely feel like I am squeezing it in my 20s. Do you think that you're going to be able to do what you're doing sustainably? Like I know you go really hard with your work. You take it really seriously. Like you're very intense with it. You've been doing this for 10 years. Could you see yourself like maintaining this intensity for 10, 20 more years?
Um, I think it depends, right? I think it depends. Like, so I mean, I think part of the reason that I've been able to do that and to do this for so many years sustainably is like with Yellow Card. I mean, it feels like I mean, you can point to like different stages of the company, and it's like that was a totally different company, right? And so like it feels like a new company, right? Many times, and so that has helped keep it interesting, right? That has helped keep it fun. That has helped keep it challenging, right? Working the brain, that kind of thing. Um, at the same time, like in the absence of that, if it was just, I mean, if we were just doing the same thing every day over and over again, there was never any change, there was never like pivoting, there was never any of that. I don't know how long it would be sustainable, right? I think you need, at least for me, right? Like I need that excitement, right? I need like something new, something like it needs to feel like it's something not net new, but like something that is working, that's growing, that's going in the right direction, all of that. And yeah, I mean, at least for me, and I think for a lot of the team, the most recent rebirth has happened within this past calendar year, right? With like the U.S. elections last year, and then like the Genius Act and everything this year. All of a sudden, I've been running around saying stable coins into a void for years, and then all of a sudden, everybody cares about it, and the president's talking about it, and you have all this activity going on in the space. And so I think, like stuff like that has helped a lot. I think in the absence of that, it's hard to say. Like, it's hard to say where I would be at from like a headspace standpoint if none of that ever happened. If, again, we were just, banging our heads into a wall saying stablecoin. But I think how do you say, there are external factors that, at least for me, that affect like my internal monologue, right? And like those external factors, the macro environment shifting helped me quite a bit to like, stay grounded and like, yes, this is good. Let's, hell yeah, dude, let's make this happen.
When you're saying macro environment, you're referring to like the price and hype around cryptocurrencies? Or are you talking about the regulatory landscape or something else?
I mean, for us, it's stable coins, right? So they are still $1. And much to my chagrin, I bought all this USDT back in the day, hoping it was going to make me rich, hoping I was going to retire on it, and it is still $1. Should have just bought Bitcoin. But so with stable coins, look, crypto, like the crypto boom and bust cycle happens, and that's going to continue to happen regardless. But I think, with stable coins, this year has been the first year that people really came around to this realization that like, oh shit, like stable coins are huge. Like this technology is a fundamental shift in the way that money moves around the world, right? And like this is a good thing. And I think that like that people coming around to that has helped a lot, right? In that, like, it's just a lot more fun now, right? Like, I didn't love, I mean, look, for like 2 years, it's like, it's like, we're going around for the last, more than 2 years, right? Like 4 years now, we've been going around explaining to people, oh, stable coins are good. You should use stable coins to do this or do that. And it's like the dollar, but better, all this. And, um, it, you know, most of these guys wouldn't even return our calls, right? Now all of a sudden after 2025, we're working with companies that, 2 years ago wouldn't get on the phone with me, wouldn't return a call, things like that. Right. So there's been quite a shift in sort of the macro environment as you think about like this technology. And at least for me, that has helped quite a bit. Right. I think that other, like, you see like the Bridge acquisition and stuff like that, like other things that like are exciting that happen in the ecosystem, again, just sort of revitalizes that, like, how do you say, like, competitive spirit, right?
Do you think that you could still be excited if Yellow Card was still doing a lot of what it was doing at first, like in the first 2-3 years, just scaling that up, like rinse and repeat style? Or do you think like the landscape changing and you creating these business pivots was like necessary to keep you like psychologically like engaged, like through the novelty of the change?
So, I think, I referred to it as pivots, right? But I like when I think like in hindsight, you can sort of point to where a pivot happened. But in practice, going through it, there was never a decision. There was never a hard decision to pivot, right? At no point were we like, actually, like, let's just do this entirely different thing. It's one of those things that sort of happened naturally, right? And I think what was important for me and for our team was letting those things happen naturally, right? Like, let the business go where customers and where the market leads it, rather than trying to just force in, like, no, this is the idea. This is what we're doing. We're not deviating from this. And I think that has been quite important, right? So, I'll give you like a good example, right? So, when we, back, several years ago, right, when we started doing more customer interviews and trying to really nail down, what is the use case? What is this? What is that? That was when we started to realize, okay, our biggest customers and where most of our revenue is coming from are actually businesses. They're not consumers, right? We started off as a consumer exchange, but most of the revenue is coming from businesses, right? Small businesses, large businesses, whatever, right? And you have, the CFO or the treasurer signing up with a personal account because we didn't do business accounts at the time. And as we started to realize that, the focus shifted naturally as that sort of revenue concentration shifted, i.e., as the concentration of like true consumers to businesses shifted, we tried to shift resourcing, right? We tried to shift marketing towards focusing on businesses rather than focusing on like Daniel as an individual.
Yeah.
Right. We started to focus. We started to shift. The resourcing from like a customer support standpoint, right? To make sure that we have enough. We have enough sort of help for these businesses that need more handholding than like the average consumer. And so, yeah, we tried to follow the customer more than anything. I think, the way that I see it is we put out technology and we had an idea of what that technology would be used for. And then the market told us something completely different. Right. And I think this is how it goes with a lot of tech, right? I guarantee you that, Sam Altman had a very specific idea of what like ChatGPT is going to be used for. Right. I don't think that he, it would be used for, generating videos of like, Obama and Trump arguing about like video games.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so, I think once you put tech and products out into the world, you have to be open to the idea that you don't actually know everything about the tech and the products, right? A lot of it, is going to be determined by the market.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the most interesting things in the startup journey. And like it can happen right away at the very beginning. Like users can surprise you, but I find that that's something that just like never stops. Like that users will like use your, like air quotes, misuse like your product in a way that was different than intended. And you can learn so much from that.
Yes.
I actually wanted to ask you about this shift. This was one of the things I was like really curious about. I think January 1st is the cutoff, right? For like no more retail, like consumer transactions. It's all B2B from that point on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel about like this change in the mission and like how, like change in focus? Like you started this company with different reasons in mind. Like how do you like grapple with both like the change in mission as well as like the change in focus?
Yeah, I mean this happened in practice, I would say several years ago. It is one of those things that look, the mobile app made money, right? And it was, it was doing fine, but as a percentage of revenue, it just like the B2B side of the business kept growing so quickly that the mobile app became just a smaller and smaller and smaller percentage of overall revenue. And so it got to the point, obviously, where we are now, where it's like, okay, it doesn't make sense for us to continue to resource this. Like, it's just like we can cut this. It will be, it will not even make a dent in sort of overall revenue, and it just doesn't make sense to continue to resource it. Right? It's actually, I mean, like consumer is quite resource intensive.
Yeah.
As compared to like B2B, right? And so it's one of those things where we shifted that focus, right? And we shifted it away from doing consumer years ago, right? We haven't marketed to consumers in, I mean, a couple of years at this point. We haven't even let new people onto the app in a while. We raised minimums, things like that, right? So it's been sort of a slow roll of moving existing customers and that sort of thing off of the app, right? We didn't want to just shut it down. I mean, we had, look, at our peak, we had like 2 million consumers on the app, right? So it's one of those things that we didn't want to just shut down and kill overnight. And so, we sort of devised a plan where it's like, hey, look, let's not continue to grow it. And then, as B2B continues to grow, like this just becomes a smaller and smaller and smaller part of revenue, to where, any important consumers that are left, right? Anybody that's doing like large enough volumes to sort of be considered a business, we'll move them over. We have a business portal, which is, I mean, essentially the same thing as the app, just not a mobile app. We moved them over there. And then, for like the smaller consumers, right? The guys that are doing, $10, we just won't service that anymore starting next year.
It reminds me of when Brex decided to stop serving traditional small businesses and decided to focus on like venture-backed businesses and the like. Like it's important. There comes a time often where you have to like decide like who your customer really is, because if you build for them all, like you're in a way you're not building for anybody. Like SwiftSkew service gas stations. The needs of gas stations, liquor stores, and smoke shops are very similar. Like it is very easy for us to build for smoke shops and liquor stores. In fact, some of our customers also use us at those other locations. But at the end of the day, if we like focus on building for liquor stores or smoke shops, like it takes away from our gas station, like core ICP, which is like 81% of TAM, or like the majority of the low hanging fruit, the return on investment lies. We're in the industry we know the best. So like there's often like this decision that you have to make as a founder, like where you just have to really focus and like not get distracted by the shiny. But in this case, it seems it's a little different because you're switching like your core audience, and like I can see why. There's less headache. Like you probably had consumers that gave you a lot more headache on your support phone lines than many B2B customers that are like thousands and thousands of times larger.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, like, do you feel like you might be letting consumers down, not continuing with the original mission of enabling them, not building for them?
I think that realistically, so here's what I will say is we still have all of the tech, right? It's not like, we didn't throw the code away. We are enabling, the white labeling of, consumer platform for, companies that we work with. We do a lot of B2B2C, all of that, right? So there are still ways to interact with us. I think that to do a consumer crypto exchange in emerging markets, in Africa specifically, where we started out, that business is probably, I would say, probably 5 to 10 years away from being completely sustainable in and of its own right.
Mm.
And I think that there's a number of factors that go into that. If you look at, if you look at just like population trends, income trends, things like that, over the next 5 to 10 years, you will see a massive change, right, in, the population and income demographics of like the African continent. You can look at, frankly, you can look at it very similar to the way that like India has trended, right? Where, if you tried to start a consumer crypto exchange in India 20 years ago, it wouldn't have really been possible, right? Like the income levels weren't there. Just the population, it wasn't there, right? Also, the cost for compliance was significantly higher, when you go back 25, 30 years in like India. In Africa, it's the same thing today, right? Like the cost of compliance for me to actually verify who Daniel is, which is a regulatory requirement, right? Is quite tough. It's a lot more expensive to do that in a number of countries than it is in like the US or in India now, or in, any of these other places where there's just better sort of ID systems, better address structure, better, all this stuff. Right.
Mm.
And so I think that, it's one of those things that, in 5 to 10 years, I would not preclude us from, doing it again or, having another go at it. But I don't see it being possible on its own right now. And the reality is, once you start doing B2B, it is a lot smoother. You make a lot more money. It's tough to just not focus your time and resources on it. To your point, look, consumers, with consumers, man, like the guy that does $5 will cause you so many more problems than the business that does 500,000.
Yeah.
Right? Like our average here. Yeah.
We have like a store owner who their gas station might have 30,000 in monthly revenue, and they might give us more headache than like a store owner that has like 50 stores. Doing 3x that for each location. Like it's
100%.
Crazy the way that works. I would love to see a study on why that is.
I don't, I guess, look, if I had to guess, it's because for that customer, that $5 means a lot more than the 500K does in the business. I think that's probably part of it.
Yeah.
But the small customers would give us so much more trouble. Like if there was any issue, if a payment was delayed, anything like that, we'd have people report us to the police and say that the company is scamming people.
Yeah.
And it becomes a headache, right? So for example, in some countries, in Zambia, for example, if you any police officer in any precinct in the country is able to freeze a bank account.
Wow.
Which is a wild power. That is way too much power for a random cop to really be able to have.
Yeah.
Imagine if I could walk in to my local police precinct, in Louisiana, and I could tell them, Daniel's company in New York, or, JP Morgan in New York is scamming me. And they could just freeze JP Morgan. Right. Which is, that's essentially what was happening. Right. And so we would have people complain about a $5 transaction. I didn't receive my payment. Instead of calling customer support, going to the police and saying that we scammed them, filing a police report, the police officer in this village has never heard of us. So they just assume, this must be a Ponzi scheme or something. So they're calling the bank, freeze the account. It's a Ponzi scheme. And so now our entire operation in the country has ground to a halt for 2 days because, some guy thought we were scamming him out of $5 when he just didn't call support, because like stuff like that, right? It makes it so much more difficult versus like with businesses, we serve, in terms of like large businesses, we serve, like 400 large businesses. And it's just, man, it's just so much easier, right? Because they know how to deal with this stuff. If something is wrong, like I'm not saying they're going to be happy if something's delayed or if something's wrong, but they know how to deal with it. And so it's just, it's just so much, it's just so different, dealing with the two. And I think that there are some there are like things that need to fundamentally change, right? Like ID infrastructure and things like that need to change in a lot of parts of like Africa and certain other parts of the world that we were doing business in, before a pure retail exchange akin to like a Coinbase is truly possible.
Was it primarily regulatory burden or fraud or something else that made consumers so difficult? Or was it just that B2B was so much more lucrative? Was there like a primary reason? So regulatory in the sense of like, we have to do KYC, we have to do screenings on these customers. Yeah. So not necessarily local regulatory, right? Like in some countries, there's not necessarily hard laws around KYC, AML, things like that. But there are global standards, right? And we're a U.S. company. We have to follow U.S. standards. I'm a U.S. citizen. My heavy preference is not to be in federal prison. So we have to follow, sanctions and things like that, right? And so, like, with all of that, like, there's so much work involved in doing that in these parts of the world. Whereas in the US, it's actually quite easy for me to verify like who Daniel is. If Daniel signs up for an account as an American, like it's quite easy. You have a social security number, you have an ID that's linked to like an authority that's trustworthy, yada, 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 right? I mean, look, we in some countries, we found that, we found that like the same person could have the equivalent of like 20 social security numbers because you could just go to these ID authorities and pay them to issue you a new identity, right? Like if Daniel works at the ID authority, I don't have to bribe the ID authority. I just got to bribe Daniel. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and no, so, like I've spent enough time in countries like that to know, like you just can't count on it. Like we take our order and peace for granted here in the US.
Yes, we take the fact that everybody has one social security number for granted, right? When you're verifying people based on social security number. And so like it's stuff like that, right? Where it becomes quite difficult to actually do these screenings at scale, to be able to verify people's identities, things like that. It's also a lot of it becomes manual, right? You end up with just, a lot of people have the same name as like somebody that, scammed somebody or something. Like so many people have the same name, man. Like, like it's difficult. It's time consuming and it's resource intensive. We had to have a massive compliance team. We had to have all this tooling. We had to have all this stuff. And the thing is that's all fine if you're Coinbase and your customer on average is doing a couple $100. Right. If your customer on average is doing like $15, it doesn't work out. The math just doesn't math.
Just doesn't math. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's a pretty drastic change from the business you had when, like, you and I first started chatting back in 2020. Very different mission, very different approach, but I bet you guys are making a whole lot more money. How have things changed, like with how much capital you've raised with all these rounds? I think the last round was Series C and you raised something like 88 million in total venture capital. Does that sound right?
We raised 33 in the C. I think 80 is the like total
overall cumulative. Yeah. Cumulative amount.
Yes. And so, look, I can tell you, it makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah.
I remember when we raised our Series A, like after like 2 months, I was like, oh, wow, this is so much better than not having money. Like,
yeah,
you get to do more. You get to, there's more things that you get to do. There's more things that you get to invest in. There's more sort of lines of business that you get to go down, things like that. I think at the same time, like there is a trap with venture funding, right? And like on the same token, right, where yes, it makes things more fun, it makes things more exciting, but it is also much easier to get stuck in this trap of like, oh well, we need to hire a bunch of people now. We need to get bring in a bunch of like expensive people to do this and do that, and things like that. And I think that's one of the things that over the years we've been trying to correct, right? And we haven't really increased the size of the team in about 2 years now, right? We haven't really increased the size of the team. We cycle, so like we've moved on. Like for example, we had like 60 people on the customer support team, right? And so that team is now maybe 15 people, and so those people, that headcount got rehired and redistributed to other parts of the org. But overall, I think that one thing that has become much more important to me, and that I wish we had focused on earlier, is like revenue per employee. I think matters a lot now. And I think with the advent of AI, it's only going to matter more and more because you can do more with less, right? You can do more with less people. So revenue per employee, I think matters. And then like making sure that you have, the right people in the right positions that, really care about the job is critical. And as the company grows, it becomes so much harder to weed that out. Right. And I think, like my general opinion on this, and I think, this goes for any public company, any private company over, I don't know, call it like probably 100 people, but like, maybe even below 100 people. I think that in general, in tech, all of these companies are at least 20% overhired. And I think that good companies are 20% overhired, like really good companies. Like Amazon is probably 20% overhired, and Amazon runs a tight ass ship, right? The bad ones are like multitudes overhired, right? And I don't want to throw any specific companies under the bus, but there are a lot of like big public companies that we have worked with that have tens of thousands of employees. And I guarantee you could cut more than 50% of them tomorrow and not a single thing would change. Right. Yeah. And that's something like for any company over 100-ish people, that's something that I always tell people that you need to keep in mind is like the company's always going to be a little overhired. And being a little overhired is fine because then you have redundancy. And if somebody leaves, it's not like you're scrambling to find a replacement or whatever. So like, you want to have some buffer. But like some of these companies are, like 2x overhired, right? Some of these companies are 50 to 80% overhired. And that is when it becomes just a waste of money and a waste of resources.
Yeah, I feel like the average company, like more than 500 people, is like 50 to 80% overhired, and like,
the average, yes, that's what. Like, if you're 20% overhired, I think you're running a good ass company, right? That is quite impressive. If you have over 100 people and you are only 20% overhired, you are running a really impressive company, in my opinion. Right, because you need a buffer, you need some redundancy, but most of these companies, right, are definitely in like that 50 to 80% range.
How do you view the trade-offs? Like you'd mentioned some, like being pressured to hire, but like what about the other trade-offs you have with taking venture capital, all these rounds from A to C, from seed to C? Like, what are like some of the biggest things you compare nowadays, like when you're thinking about raising your next round, and like what are the things you wish you'd known when taking that money before?
In general, I think we've had a very good sort of run and experience with the people that we have taken money from, that we work with closely, that are on our board, all of that. So I'm not in the camp of being able to talk to you about like the horror stories of VC. knock on wood that continues into the future, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, look, I mean, I've heard some horror stories, right? I mean, one of the guys that was that I was quite close with when we were starting out was kicked out of his company and had all these issues. The VCs wanted to take it a totally different direction. It's like, well, what the hell did you guys invest in if you want to change? Like, why did you invest in the company if you want us to change the business model, right? I'm not doing that. Like, you'll have to kick me out. And so they kicked him out. And like, and by the way, those guys went on and started the same idea, but like, on their own without the VCs, and turned it into a $2 billion company. So it turns out they were right. But yeah, it's, there are, yeah, I mean, there's so many examples of that. I don't really understand it. I don't really understand the thought process behind it. I don't know. So, but like, I really can't speak to that though. I think, in general, we've had a very good run with the people that we work with. They've been extremely helpful. They've been hands-on when we need them to be. They've been hands-off when we, are like heads down trying to build something and working. They're not overbearing in terms of like what they need. But they also, keep us accountable and keep us honest. And so, yeah, I think like the reality is, I think it just comes down to people, right? It really just comes down to the people. And if you are taking money from somebody, look, this is what I this is what I tell people is like, if you're taking money from somebody, like some people compare it to a marriage, right? And like, I mean, that's like, I guess kind of true, but like in theory, I could leave my wife. Like I can't leave the investors, right? They have, like they will sue my ass. They will like, it is much more legally binding than a marriage, right? And so it is deeper than like a marriage, right? It's like, yeah, it's like you are taking money from these people and you are agreeing that like, you are going to do everything in your power to win a return for them, right? That's essentially the agreement. And so, yeah, it's like, it really comes down to like who you're working with and making sure that you're working with good people that are going to understand the ups and downs, that are going to understand, what it's actually like in the operator's seat. Because I think like the thing that does annoy me when I see it is like the investors that sort of think that they always know better than the founder, than the company, right? And like again, we just don't have that. We've been very fortunate not to have that with like our board, with our team. But like it's so much easier to advise 100 companies than it is to run one, right? So like you need to understand those ups and downs. You need to understand the ebbs and flows. You need to understand that like every month is not going to be up. But if the general trend is, then, fantastic. And I think, yeah, making sure that you find the right people that are thinking about it long term, that's critical.
What do you wish you had known before you had raised venture capital in terms of like your responsibilities? Like, was there anything that you would suggest young founders raising capital for the first time to like know, eyes wide open the first time?
You don't actually need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, I think, like that, like you don't need it is, a bit facetious, but it is true to some extent, right? I mean, I think when we were starting out, I spent probably 2 years trying to raise our initial like seed round.
Yeah.
And if I had just taken those 2 years, if I had taken all the time that was spent on like fundraising in those 2 years and just threw it into the business would have been a lot further along, and the seed round would have taken, a lot less time, right? I mean, like the seed, I still remember, like getting off a call and just being like, we're not going to raise money. Like, this is dumb. I'm going around telling people we're going to sell magic internet money in Nigeria. It's not exactly the most investable idea in the world. Like, we're not going to raise money. I still like vividly remember getting off this call. I was just like, that's like, we're not going to do this. We're
Magic internet
we're
money.
going to build a company that just works, and like, we're going to make money. Like, what an insane idea, right? And so like we started building something that we just like sort of shifted focus, right? And it's like, hey, look, instead of focusing on like raising money, let's just focus on building. Let's just focus on building, launch this, make it work. We did that. We ended up in, like 6 figures of monthly revenue before actually raising our seed round.
That's great.
Like, yeah, because nobody would give us money for that. So it was less of like no, we got this. It was more of like, all right, well, nobody's giving us money, so I guess we got to.
Guess we have to bootstrap.
So, and like, frankly, though, that's the attitude that you should have. Is nobody like
don't count on it.
Yeah, but the thing is in practice, it is so easy to count on now, right? And so this advice really only applies outside of the U.S., where it's not as easy, right? If you're starting up a company in India, Africa, South America, whatever, then it is harder to actually raise that seed money. But damn, man, like in the U.S. now, you can raise money for anything, dog. You go walk down the street in San Francisco, tell somebody you reinvented shoes, and they'll give you $1 million. Like,
man. I know you're not kidding either. It's pretty incredible. Like, US is the best place to do it. So how much did you raise for your seed?
1.5 for the seed.
What do you think the company would look like today if you'd never, ever raised capital? Would you still be doing it, running the company? Like, or would you have gotten too bored from like not having enough leverage and enough like money to take on opportunities for novel pivot points?
It's a good question. I think the company would be smaller, obviously. We wouldn't have grown as fast, and we wouldn't be growing as fast. But I do believe that the company would end up in the same place, just on a longer time horizon. And like, I think that for any company, like for any company that is going to raise money, like the point of the money should be to accelerate growth. The money's not going to turn a business model that doesn't work into one that does. And so I think like the way that I see it is like we would be trending in the same direction, just smaller and probably not growing as quickly.
Do you think you'd be half like the king metric that you have, like whether it's ARR or whatever, or transactions processed? Like, do you think it'd be half? Do you think it'd be a quarter? Like, where do you think you'd be in terms of like your main KPI? And you don't have to share the number, just like the number itself, but just like ratio wise, like how much further behind would you be, you think? It's a, sort of an impossible question because like there are opportunities you can take. I bet nobody's ever asked you this.
No. We would be probably, call it like 6, or not 6, sorry. We'd be probably 10 to 20% of the size that we are now.
Wow.
We'd be probably 1/10 to 1/5, depending on a number of factors and things like that. But I think like, yeah, the thing is like, we wouldn't have, I don't think that we would have some of the big name partnerships that we've been able to land. Right? Because
Without
I think
the signaling.
like, the money, like raising money, part of what it does, even outside of like any of like helping with growth and everything, is it is a signal, right? If a company raises, $100 million round, it's like, oh shit, dude, like those guys are crushing.
They're legit.
Yeah.
They're the real thing.
Like there's definitely a signaling, right? When you look at like, I don't know, when you look at like a company like Bridge or something, right? I mean, they were actually quite small when Stripe acquired them, right? And they have now very much grown into the valuation that Stripe gave them. And a large part of the reason for that is the fact that Stripe bought them, right? And like that additional publicity and like the, how do you say, getting the name out there and like the legitimacy that like the Stripe name added. I mean, those guys have absolutely crushed it, this year as a result, right? And do I think that they would have gotten there on their own? Yeah, probably, but it certainly not on the same time horizon, right? And so like I think it's the same with like investment as it is with M&A or anything else. It's like yeah, it adds like a certain level of legitimacy. Yeah.
Earlier, you'd mentioned how important it is in hiring people who care. Do you think you're good at hiring people who care? Do you think you've mastered it?
Generally, yes. But I think overall, like, I don't think you can master it. I think that like, I think that with hiring, like, there is a good portion of hiring that is just like vibes and inshallah.
Yeah.
Right. Like I mean, look, some of the people that on paper and on interview I was pumped about turned out to be terrible employees. And then there are people that like I was like sort of indifferent about, coming in, that turned out to be fantastic. And I don't think it's something that you can necessarily screen for, right? And this is why experience is important, right? Like if somebody has a bunch of experience, it's very easy to say like, oh, great, well, look, they did a great job at this company. I know that this company, runs a good operation. So, it's very likely that, they cared and things like that. Versus if they were, I mean, and this is why, like, I actually, like, when looking at somebody's experience, like, I judge their experience based on the company in a lot of cases. I.e., like, there are a couple of companies that, like, we often see CVs from, where it's like, I know that this company's not doing well at all. I know that this company has not been doing well in years and is way the hell overhired. Most of the people that I work with there are incompetent. So it's like, why would I bring you on? Why would I give value to that experience that you have when, like, yeah. So like, you have to use all the data that you have to sort of make that decision. The other thing that I think is kind of wild about hiring is like, you have like 3 or 4 interviews in most cases, and then you are like signing up, you're like signing up like this person to work for you for like several years after like basically knowing them for like a few weeks. Right. And so it's, again, it's tough. It's one of those things that's like, it's one of those things that is difficult. It doesn't get easier as you scale. You can attract better talent and things like that, and all that's great, but it doesn't necessarily get easier. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert at it by any means. Like I've made just as many mistakes as anybody else. And I think like making sure that you actually sort of like correct those mistakes is like, that's actually the key.
Hiring people who care, I have felt like it is one of the hardest things for me to do well. I think it's probably for all founders. It's just like, it's so tough. And then like you have someone, like by the time I realize that someone actually is just working for the paycheck and nothing else, the sunk cost is often too high to make the decision right away. They say either hire slow or fire fast, ideally both. It's really hard to fire fast if you have someone in a mission critical position where there's no like easy replacement for them, and you've realized they just don't really care all that much. How do you approach situations like that? Do you just rip off the Band-Aid and leave the seat empty, as Steve Jobs advocates? Or do you?
I think that's the only answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the thing is like we used to I can point to so many examples where we slow rolled this. In every single one of them, when we let go of that person, we did not miss them at all. In every single instance, like you should always rip the Band-Aid off. I think it's very easy, and like I think. And this is something that like I've also become more cognizant of recently, and I'm trying to do a better job of as like, founder, CEO, is if you manage a team, it is insanely easy to get stuck in this mindset of like, oh no, I need, Daniel. I need this person. I need that person, even if they're not doing much. Right. We have, I mean, like this is, going back a little ways, but I mean, like we had a department where like the manager was doing literally everything. I mean, everything. But every time that I would talk to, this person about their team, it's like, oh no, like I need them. I need that. Like I need this person. They're doing this, they're doing that. And it's like, you're the one spending 16 hours a day working because you have to fix all their crap. But like, I don't know. And like, I don't know if this is human nature. I don't know if it's just like a sort of reality in the workplace, but like people, if you have a team and you are managing a team, there are exceptions to this. Obviously there are managers that are just, I mean, cutthroat, right? And like they're the first ones.
Hard to find.
It is. I do generally agree that they are harder to find, right? Like in general, when people take over a team, they start defending that team and they start defending their team and they start defending the head count and things like that. I think people are afraid of like losing head count. Like, i.e. if I, fire this person, how do I know I'm going to be able to hire somebody back and like things like that. I think that like that can become like an issue stuck in people's head. But in every case, we have not missed the people whatsoever. And it's very easy. It's very easy to like, again, to get into the mindset of, no, we need this person or we need that person. In every case, we've not missed them. You should always rip the Band-Aid off, leave the seat empty. If the job is that important, somebody will fill it in. Somebody will figure it out. Somebody will do it. Yeah. But like the reality is like, if you have somebody that's not good in a mission critical role, they're probably not doing that job in the first place. Like it's like, they're probably not getting done what you think they're getting done.
You mentioned that you can't screen for how much someone cares before hiring them, right?
I think it's quite difficult. Yeah.
How fast can you determine if someone truly cares after hiring them, and how do you do it?
Quickly. That once they're inside, it's quite easy, right?
How do you do it?
Externally, it can be quite difficult.
Like even vibe check, like I like the way I currently do it is like vibe check, like how much agency ownership do they exhibit? But like, I wonder if you have like a more of like a scientific approach to it, or more objective or easily observable way.
It's like, it's at least for me in the first like 3 months, it is still a vibe check, but it's a vibe check with extra data. Right. I.e., it's not just like me and you are having a conversation and like, yes, you're saying the right things. You seem to be a self-starter, blah, blah, blah.
It's ramping metrics.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you join the team and you're leading, I don't know, marketing. Right. And we hired you to lead marketing because marketing wasn't going well, right? That's why, typically you're hiring to fill gaps, right? I mean, sometimes you're hiring because, somebody's good is leaving or something like that, but typically you're hiring to fill gaps, right? So we had a gap, we hired you, right? And you're running it. There's going to be problems. You're not going to fix everything in 3 months, right? There's going to be problems. There's going to be, things that go wrong. How do you respond to those things that go wrong? How are you handling those? How are you sort of taking initiative over the rest of your team? How are you redeploying resources? How are you shuffling things up and, making it your things like that? I mean, you can there are so many more things that you can look at after like 3 months or 6 months or whatever the probation period is in any particular country. There's so many more things that you can look at. And I do generally think like hire slow, fire fast, I know is the motto.
Yeah.
I think it's actually quite difficult to hire slow. I think that when you try to hire slow, good people get taken up.
Yeah.
Like, hiring slow is actually usually a good way to see, oh shit, like we should have hired that guy.
Yeah.
And so typically you do have to hire fast. That is, just the reality of the market. You also need to fire fast for sure. Like you need to rip Band-Aids when they're not working. Like I said, I can point to so many examples of like, this person was not working. We did not rip the Band-Aid. We should have, wish we did this, 5 months earlier. And so, yeah, like when it's not working, it's not working. Like it's not fun for anybody. And also like good people want to work with good people, right? If you are a high performer, you want to work with other high performers. You want to work with other people that care about their job. And so bringing in people that don't, it messes up other things in the company, right? So, yeah.
How have you been able, like maybe switching gears a bit from the specifics to like more of like making the journey sustainable? This is a theme in the conversations I have with you the last few times. How do you refill your cup as a founder? And how do other founders refill their cups?
I can only really speak for myself. I think everybody has their own, methods. I think for me, like I get a lot of my energy from other people, right?
Mm.
And I think that like having the right conversations at the right time with the right people that you're close to, with a co-founder, with like an early employee, with, somebody that's been on the team with you for a while, finding that time together is pretty critical, right? And I think that often, like I find that, keeps me grounded, and I hope helps keep them grounded as well. I think that, you always need a goal. You always need a short-term goal and a long-term goal, right? You need something that you're working towards like over the next week or two that like keeps you going. Like, it's like, no, I have to, like, I got to get this shit done, dude. Like, I got to get this out. But then you also need like a longer term goal that you're working towards that will be accomplished, I like to say, within 12 months.
Mm.
Because anything longer than 12 months, I think the brain starts to discount. Right. 12 months is like a good cutoff where it's like, yeah, okay, like by the end of 26, like, yeah, I'm going to like, I don't know, we're going to, have, this much revenue. We're going to be in this country. We're going to, whatever.
Yeah.
That also, like, again, it helps. Like, you need to constantly have things that you're focusing on, right? You just, like, it can, it needs to be a never ending stream of like the ADHD 8-year-old jumping on candy, like bouncing around, like, like different things, right? Like you can't, if at any point, and like, cause I've noticed, like when my productivity has slumped the most, it's been in periods where things got so long-term, so abstract, where it's like, oh, like, we're gonna IPO one day. It's like, yeah, that's great in like 5 years. Like, dude, like I'm going to be dead in 5 years. What the hell do I care about 5 years? Right. Like, like if you get too long term, you lose that, like that fire, right? You have to have short term and like medium term things that you're excited about. The long term vision needs to remain, right? And long term vision always needs to be sort of like the end goal that you're driving to, and you need to make decisions with that in mind. But you have to have things in the short term that you are focused on at all times.
In terms of meaning and purpose, have you found what that is? You and I are pretty young. Like we may not have nailed it yet. Like we don't have kids. Like they say that meaning changes quite a bit when you have kids. But do you have any inkling of a suspicion of like on your deathbed, like what is going to matter most to you and how like what you're doing connects to that? Do you think you have like an understanding of like why you're here?
I I think I think that for me, a lot of it comes down to meaningful, quantifiable impact that you can have on other people, right, and other people's lives. And I think that you know, look, maybe for some people, like having an impact on like a small community is great, and that's enough. I think that with technology and being born at like in the time period that we've been born into, in the moment that we are, there is an opportunity with technology to really scale the impact that you can have on people across the board. And I think that, using technology, you are in a position to, on your deathbed, be able to look back and say, I had an impact not on like, one or two people, right? I had an impact on millions of people, right? I was able to build something that positively impacted millions of people, that had, like some meaningful impact in their lives. I was able to, work to change systems in this place or that place, that enacted, regulation that had a meaningful impact on people's lives. I think, for me, that is, I think, a lot of sort of the underlying driver is like, I want to do something that, like has an impact on many more people than I will ever meet. Right. And I think that, like, again, with tech, we live in a time where you can actually do that, right? You can get your message out, you can get your service, you can get your whatever out to so many more people that you'll never meet than ever before.
It sounds like you've defined the scale of your impact and the magnitude. But have you defined like the tone or the tune, like the actual like way in which that happens, like throughout the rest of your life, not just with Yellow Card or maybe with Yellow Card, like the way in which you do that, like the actual mission, the thread that connects like the magnitude of your impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think the mission is the impact, right? I think that in terms of like what does that actually look like in practice, I think that it is. I think it's hard to say, right? I think that it's easy to speak very generically. It's easy to say, I want to build something that has, this impact. I want to, I don't know, like, I want to, influence policy in, certain regions that has, this impact, things like that. I think that that's easy to say. How do you do that in practice? I think it's a lot harder. That's where you need to be a lot more flexible, right? I think that in practice, what does that look like? Hard to say. What does that, like, what form does that take? What actions do you have to take to get there? That's where it becomes a lot more difficult to say.
Yeah, I mean, like nobody can predict like the steps, like the actions, like the journey itself is unpredictable. Like I understand that, but is there like a greater like purpose? For example, like if you said to empower like millions of people with like accessible, like banking the unbanked, for example, or like raising the playing field with education, or like is there like a specific purpose like that you think that is, or like theme that's going to unify perhaps like the different endeavors, like different projects you do that connects them all outside of just make it big with impact, like scale? Like is there a common theme?
I think that for me, like two of the more important themes. So I don't like banking the unbanked. I don't actually believe in that as like a concept.
Just an example.
Yeah, but like I think the two key ones for me is number one. I'm like very heavily believe in like financial sovereignty, i.e. like whether you have $1 or you have $1,000,000, you should be able to do whatever the hell you want with that money, right? Nobody should be telling you what to do with your money, how you can spend it, things like that. That's number one, right? Is promoting financial sovereignty, which I think that, again, like, we live in a time with, tech, with, blockchain, with crypto, with, these technologies that for the first time actually enable that in parts of the world where legislation might not, right? And where monetary policy might not. So I think that, like, financial sovereignty is a big one. I think that confidence, if you want to speak more generally, confidence is another big one. And giving people, and again, this is one of those things where it's like, well, what does this look like in practice? I don't know yet. But like giving people more confidence, letting people, like, people, I think, waking up and looking in the mirror and being like, being ready to go and like ready to tackle the day. Having that confidence is critical for so many things in human society. I think that, like, if everybody was more and I'm not talking cocky, I'm talking confident, right?
Yeah,
like,
I got you.
If everybody was more confident, I think that all of a sudden you would have, like, the birth rate crisis would be solved. The economy would be in a better place, right? You would have, like, you would have more people would be, hiring. You would have, less poverty. You would have, there are just so many things that, like, I feel like confidence is just like such a precursor for, right? And, people talk about, like, I don't know. People talk about, like, how did like this person or that person, get to the place that they are, do this or do that. And in so many cases, the stuff just comes down to confidence, right? It comes down to, like, walking in and knowing that, you belong in that room and that, you can, talk to anybody in there. Yeah.
I really like that. I haven't heard that before. Someone's, like, purpose. Like, my purpose is to give, like, tell me if I'm saying this right as I repeat it back to you. It's to inspire as many people as I can with confidence.
Yes.
In themselves.
Yes. In themselves. Confidence.
And, and would you like to do that?
That solves so much in human society.
I think that confidence generally comes from two places, and tell me if I'm missing something or if you disagree. I think it comes from, like, genuine competence and your confidence reflecting your competence. And then there's, like, another kind, which is perhaps manifesting. Or fake it till you make it. The two have a fine line where it's just like, I'm going to do these great things. I believe in myself. Like, it's still just as authentic, but in a different way. Whereas, like, competence is like, you can't, like, it's a gift of, like, not even a gift. Like, the confidence just comes from your competence. Whereas this other form, it's something that is, like, more internal. It's not the world shining back at you that you should be confident. I might have explained that in a confusing way, but does that sound right to you?
I think so. I think when you think about like, competence, I know some insanely smart people that are not confident at all. And I know some very dumb people that are,
way too confident.
So I don't know that there's necessarily a direct correlation, right? I think that there can be in certain areas, right? I think that if you're really good at, like, you're really good at, like, biology, and then you walk into, a biology conference with, a bunch of biologists, and that you're really good at it, like, that's great. But, like, I think more often than not, like, the smarter that some people are, it can almost negatively impact, your level of confidence, right? By being too smart, because the smarter you are, the more you know what you don't know. Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
that's a good point.
Yeah. Like, whereas, like, I know absolutely nothing about theoretical physics, like nothing.
Mhm.
Like I don't even know what it refers to. I think that's like Einstein's shit. I don't know, whatever. But like, I
Hmm.
don't know what I don't know about theoretical physics at all, right? And so, like, if I started to read into it, if I started to learn more about theoretical physics, I would start to learn things where it's like, oh shit, well, I don't know about this. I don't know about, now I know all the things that I don't know. Now I know that there's all
Yeah,
these branches of this,
sure.
science that I don't know anything about. Right. And so, like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
This is probably a weird explanation, but I think that
No, I got you.
it can be negatively correlated in that you can
Yeah.
learn more about things that you don't know anything about, which can impact your confidence because it's like, oh shit, I know that I don't know anything about these 8 branches of like this thing. Whereas for me, it's like, yeah, I don't know anything about that. I don't like whatever, dude. Who cares? like, um, on the other hand, though, there's like fake it till you make it. I think there's some degree of that. I think like for me, like confidence at its core is like some degree of certainty of the future,
Hmm.
right? In any given sense. Like I think at its most simplistic form, it's just certainty of the future. Confidence, like in a job interview, if you're going to go into a job interview confidence, because I have certainty that like the future is going to be me getting that job,
Or it's
right?
going to be great for you no matter what, even if you don't get the job. It's like an
Exactly.
exit from this, like a divergence from the scarcity mindset.
Exactly. Like confidence for me in an investor call is, I'm confident, not necessarily that like Daniel is going to invest, but that somebody will, right? And that we will be able to finish this round and,
Be
like,
okay.
we'll get it through. Right. And so like, I think that's more so what it's about is like some certainty in the future. And I think that like for a lot of people, there's uncertainty, right? Like people are just uncertain about their future. They're scared. They're, whatever. Right. And then for some people, they are so in the day to day, they're so in the weeds that they can't even think about the future. Right.
Yeah.
And I think those are the two things more than anything that really impact like the ability for people to be confident. And there are other factors, right? I mean, like, again, look, some people wake up and they look at they don't like the way they look and like that impacts their confidence, right? So it's like, like so much of it is just mental.
So, how do you want to accomplish this calling, this meaning,
No
this
idea.
purpose? Like, no idea?
No clue.
Yeah.
No clue. I'm focused on the financial sovereignty one right now. So
Yeah, no, I got
we'll figure the other one out later.
Yeah, there's different angles. Like in a way, like I mean, like I feel like one of my callings is to like help people uh express their individual agency. And I guess like a big component of that is confidence in themselves. So I think you and I are pretty closely aligned in terms of like why we do what we do, but we may be too young to figure out how to get that to manifest in the world. I feel like there is some degree of wisdom required to be able to like pursue some things. Like I think this might be something. I mean, like it's always better to do it sooner rather than later, but I haven't quite figured it out yet myself either. This podcast is one of the forms in which I'm, testing the waters. Like,
Trying things out.
yeah, trying things out. But I really like what you've chosen. It's one of my favorite answers I've gotten on the podcast so far. I wish you all the best with that. And like, if you ever want to brainstorm, like, give me a ring. Like, would be happy to like, bounce some ideas off. Maybe switching back to like your journey in Africa. Like, you spent a lot of time over there, man, to the point to where I actually noticed like the way you speak English has changed. Like, yeah, like since we met at Auburn, like at Auburn University where we went to school. Like, what are some of the culture shocks you first had when you came to Africa? Like, I spent a year and a half in India. Like, it was crazy how much of a culture shock I had there. I've never been to Africa. I can't imagine how that was for you. Like, what were some of the things that really stood out, that really boggled your brain those first few months?
I think, for me, and this is going back to like this idea of like, competence. Like, I think for me going in, I knew absolutely nothing. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know where most countries were on a map, right? Like, and so I went in as just a complete open slate, right? I mean, look, I come from, I grew up in Louisiana, went to school in Alabama, right? So about as southern as it gets. Like, I had no preconceived notion of what a place like Nigeria or anywhere else would be like. And so obviously, I mean, look, like things are very different, like Nigeria versus Louisiana, right? Um, but I will say, and this is like I tell people this all the time, and it's like I think it's surprising for some people, but I have more of a culture shock when I'm in Europe than I do when I'm in Africa, because I think with like Africa, with like Asia, with some of these other parts of the world, I've gone in with such an open mind to what's going on there, with such an acknowledgement of like I don't actually know anything about the play. I don't like I going in had no idea what to expect, no idea what it's going to be like. I knew that it was going to be different. That was it, right?
Mm.
And as a result, like yes, things were very different, but I feel like I was able to adapt much more quickly to those differences, which is probably why my English sounds different. But like I was able to adapt much more quickly to those differences than going in with some preconceived notion of either the way that things are there or the way they should be or anything like that. And in fairness, that is largely what I do when I go to Europe. When I go to different parts of Europe, man, I go there and I'm like, oh yeah, like this is the West. Like it's supposed to be normal. Europeans are not normal, dude. I don't know when the last time you hung out with a European is. These Europeans are crazy, dude. It's not. I mean, it depends where they're from, right? But like,
Yeah, normal
it's
based on
so
like where you're
different. Like
from.
Europeans and Americans are so different. Like, and yes, Nigerians and Americans are also very different, but like I'm more shocked when like a European is like vastly different than me than I am when like a Nigerian guy is.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Come on, man. Like you're telling me like the food didn't shock you, like the cultural values, like social norms, gender roles, these things did not blow your mind like the first time having taken like 4 flights in your life and then landing in Nigeria. Like none of like those are some of the things that blew my
It did,
world.
like, of course, it did. Yeah, like it did. Yeah, like yeah, like it was all very new. But like I didn't have a moment of culture shock in the
You were
same
ready
way that
for it.
I've had in Europe. Like I have
Mm.
been more surprised by things in Europe than I have in like okay, like a 3 hour lunch with wine in like Spain is much more like shocking to me than like I don't know, people yelling at each other during a negotiation and then like going and like having beer. Like like that, I was just like, what do you mean you drink wine at noon? Like, that
Man.
was like, for me that was so much more like, what? Yeah, I don't. I'll finish it off by saying, like, I mean, maybe it's at this point, like, I'm so used to some of these things, and like I spent so much time there that like it's like I don't really see it that way anymore. But like, yeah, I don't know. I went in with such an open, like, as such a, I mean, like, to your point, like I had been on a plane 4 times in my life before starting this company, right? So like I had no idea what it's like in any of these places. And I didn't sort of like posture as if I had any idea.
Yeah.
Like I went in, I had like good local, like friends, guides, whatever in every place that I would go to. I would have somebody good local. Like I would, have like, Daniel if I'm going to, whatever country, right? And like just like learned everything. And like, yeah, of course there's things that are very different and that are surprising, but like I just went in with such a blank slate into some of these places. I think that like in order to be culture shocked, you have to go in with an idea of the way that things should be. Like
Hmm.
and like in like again, like with Europe, it's like you go in with an idea of what the West is like, having grown up in the West, You get there and it's like, what do you mean you guys get 29 vacation days?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's relative to your expectations.
When you travel to like South Sudan, when you travel to Iraq, when you travel to places like this, you go in, like those are places that you go. You want to talk about like culture shock? Like you go in with some preconceived notions in like some of these countries, right? Because they are ostensibly dangerous, right? And like, like probably shouldn't be going. Nobody stopped me. Somebody probably should have stopped me. Nobody stopped me. But like getting there, like man, I like Iraq is one of those places I recommend to everybody. It is incredible. The people are incredible. It is so welcoming. It is safe. The war has been over for years, right? I don't think people sort of realize that necessarily, especially in America. Like the war has been over for years. It's safe. It's clean. You have a ton of money there. Holy shit, man. I mean, just Rolls Royces and Range Rovers and everything, like driving around, like tons of money, mostly from oil. Like it's so different than the notion that you have in your head of what like Iraq is. Right. And I'm not saying that like nothing bad happens there. I'm not saying that like there's not like, you don't need to be careful.
Yeah.
Like it is so much better than like the way that it gets portrayed and the way that like it is in your head. Same in like South Sudan. I mean, like South Sudan, look, it's a rough place. One of the poorest countries in the world. They've been stuck in and out of civil wars since independence. Like it's a rough place, but like there are, again, like I have friends there that are a lot more similar to me than like you would imagine, right? Yeah, I think that like so much of the world trends more similar than it does different, and I
Yeah.
think you can find that pretty much anywhere you go, no matter what you think of a country going in.
Sure. Okay. Well, interesting. And I'll take you up on hearing some of the other stories perhaps another time. But I did want to ask, like, as we get close to wrapping things up, I think one of the most important things as a founder is continuing to level up with each round of funding, with each new growth milestone, with each new business pivot. Like, it seems that the greatest limiting factor, especially in the early days of a startup, is the founder's ability to level themselves up so that they can then proceed to level the company up. It seems to precede the company's success. Sometimes the company will do well and the founder is forced to like play catch up. Like that's definitely part of it. But how do you keep yourself growing so that you can take the company forward and like continue leveling Yellow Card up?
Yeah, look, frankly, I think in an ideal world, you're always kind of catching up, right? The company is always sort of outpacing you. Innovation outpaces regulation, right? The same idea, right? Like the company should always be kind of outpacing you as the founder.
Forcing you to grow.
Yeah, exactly. Forcing you to grow. And again, like you talked about like what keeps you motivated and what keeps you like hungry. It's like, shit, dude, I can't get left behind. It's like I gotta keep up, right? And this is the same for founders as it is for employees, right? I mean, and I tell the team this all the time. It's like you need to be constantly growing, constantly improving because the company is growing and improving. And the thing is like, the person that you were 2 years ago and the company that, what the company was 2 years ago are very different, right? And what the company needs 2 years from now versus what I'm able to provide today are going to be very different. And you need to constantly be leveling up and growing in order to meet that. And I think that there are examples of founders that have done this insanely well. And then there are examples of founders that haven't done it well. Right. And then like the ones that acknowledge it normally sort of like step aside and like bring somebody in to, kind of take it to the next level. And, others don't, whatever. Right. But, I think for me, that has always been a big piece of it. Right. Is trying to keep up with a company, trying to keep up with the industry. I think I see growth probably a little bit differently than most people do, in that I think that, what is important, obviously, and you need to you need to always be improving yourself from like a knowledge standpoint, and like the way that you think about things. But like what's more important than knowledge, especially in today's day and age when like everything is Googleable, I can chat GPT whatever I need, right? Like knowledge, I think, is less important than the way that you think about things. So like always fine tuning the way that you think about things. And that's something that I had to get better at, especially as the company has grown, and we've grown into new regions and countries and cultures and things like that. Is you have to fine tune the way that you think about problems. That's definitely one of them. And then growing your network to make sure that you have people that you can talk to that are at a similar or slightly like higher stage than you is also critical, right? Because the thing is, if you and I are friends and we talk about like business problems and this and that, well, our companies might grow at completely different paces. Right? Like you guys could completely outpace us, or like we could completely outpace, or whatever. And then the problems just become different. It becomes tough to like continue to have those conversations with like you, say. And so like that's a thing that happens constantly, right? And like I've gone through this, I mean, so many times with so many different people where it's like, the company, I was, this guy, we would, how do you say, go back and forth on issues and things like that. And like try to get perspective, but then like the companies grew at different rates, right? And like we're in a much different place than they are now. And so you need to find other people that you can talk to about this stuff, right? And so I think growing your network, for me, has been like one of the more important ones. And when I say network, I don't just mean like, who can I like call if I need a favor?
Yeah.
Like network in terms of like founders that are in a similar place. Cause I think that like this, and I mean, this goes back to, again, sort of my core philosophy on this, which is that there is no book for like starting a company. There's nothing that you can actually learn that's going to help you that much. You just have to like learn from experience, from other people's, your own experience and other people's experience.
So learning from your network, like, are these mostly founders? Are they people who've exited you're learning from? Are they investors? Are they virtual mentors, if you will, like people you watch on YouTube? Like where do you learn the most in terms of like your network?
Definitely not YouTube. I find that I don't know, maybe this is just me, but like I don't take that much, as somebody that does talks at conferences all the time, like I don't take that much inspiration from talks at conferences.
Yeah.
Okay. I think like every once in a while you'll like I'll hear somebody that's like really good, and it's just like, you get fired up, right? The patriot in me comes out. But like I generally, I don't know. I find like I need to be able to like sit down with somebody and like really like talk to them, right? Like ask like the like deep probing questions. Because I'm so much less interested in the like sort of the way that something happened, and so much more interested in like the process that led to what happened. Right. So I find, I mean, like for me, it's other founders, it's people that you can sit down with and like, I mean, ask these pressing questions. Investors are good too, especially like good investors are good at this as well, because good investors have seen problems across 100 companies as opposed to seeing across one or two companies, right? And so like a good investor can also help with this in that, exactly, like in that they're able to like pattern match this stuff, and they're able to say, hey, look, this company did it this way, this company did it this way, this worked much better.
Yeah. I find that's like the most valuable thing I get from our investors, especially our Y Combinator partners. Like they've seen so many different businesses. And there's a lot more like transfer learning than you might think between like unrelated businesses. So I think that's been very helpful. Earlier, you'd mentioned that in terms of growing yourself, you've more been focused on fine-tuning how you think about problems. Are there frameworks? Is there something else? Like, what do you mean by that? Like, how have you developed that?
Like, so I think what I mean is, like, it's somewhat difficult to explain, right? But like, I think the thing is like with information now, with Google, with Chat GPT, with, the internet, with all this, there's never an excuse. Not that there's not an excuse for not knowing something. There's never an excuse for not being able to find the answer to something. If something has an answer, right? If the question is like, what year was George Washington born? Like, that has a specific answer. There's no reason you can't find that, right? There's 7 million. I can, tell you the answer before I finish this sentence, right? There's so many different ways of finding information. What you do with that information and the way you process that information is what matters. And when it comes to the problems, I think like what matters more than just like, okay, I don't know, we're having an HR issue. Daniel is, I don't know, doing XYZ and, causing a fuss and, what do we do about that? Well, it's like, okay, there's sort of the conventional, like, oh, okay, well, he's causing a problem, so we need to, follow the handbook and do this, right? Or, there's the, I don't know, the more like thinking outside of the box where it's like, well, maybe the reason that, Daniel is causing a problem is because, he is, unhappy with, the team or the people he's working with or the things that he's doing. Does he have skills that are transferable to a different part of the org, right? Should he actually be doing something completely different? And maybe this is part of the problem. And like, just when you start to think about the problem differently, you end up with a very different answer, right? Like employee A causing a problem and just like, okay, well, do we fire them or like, do we give them what they want or like, whatever, like thinking about it simplistically will lead you one path. Thinking about it in just a deeper way of like, well, why is that happening? Like always asking why, right? Like a 4-year-old, right? Just constantly asking why, right? And, getting all the way back to the creation of the universe. I think is like that to me is like one of the most important things, right? And like knowing what to ask in those different situations is the way that I think about it when you think about like thinking about things differently.
So staying curious about the root causes of any issues. Is that like a good summary?
Yeah. And like
how is the
nailing it back to the root causes.
What was that?
Like, nailing it back to the root causes. Like, don't just think about the problem at face value. Like, always be thinking a little bit, like a layer deeper.
Or, yeah. Okay. That makes sense to me. Yeah. Like, or a few layers deeper, perhaps. Like, why? Yes. Like, the 5 whys is like one of my favorite exercises. Sometimes hard to keep top of mind, but it's like I found it to be very valuable. Yeah. I think childlike curiosity is like one of the most powerful like skills of a good founder.
Yes.
Like just staying like obsessively curious about your customer, about your team, about everything that is that you do. Just like getting really deep into like understanding like how things work intimately.
100%.
How do you think your job, like in the last 10 years as CEO, has changed with more traction, more people, more external capital? Like how does your day-to-day look like over the years? How's that changed?
I think it went from very internal, right? And like, I mean, having to do everything internal, like managing everybody, all of that, to external,
Mm-hmm.
Where, okay, great. Well, like we have a team now that's managing things and that's taking care of things. And so I get to focus on sales. I get to focus on growth to becoming internal again. Right. And, going through that cycle and realizing, yes, the company grew faster with me looking externally. We got partnerships that we otherwise would not have gotten with me focusing externally. At the same time, like, now there are like internal problems that have to be sorted out, right? And I think like one of the important things to remember as the founder is that at the end of the day, you still kind of have to do everything. like, you like, look, we have a lot of really good people on the team that like make it so that I don't have to worry about X, Y, Z. And so I don't mean like, oh, I'm not writing contracts anymore.
But you're the catch-all for anything that needs to get done that doesn't get done, right?
The thing is like if you leave even good people, if you leave them completely alone internally to sort of do their own thing, they do it and they go in like the direction that they think that it should go. And if you're not constantly providing like that strategic direction and making sure that everybody in the org is pointed in the same direction, people end up going in their own direction, right? That does happen. And I mean, I could point to, so many examples where that has happened.
Yeah.
And so I think it's one of those things where it's cycled through. And I think, for me now, like it's coming back to like, I need to be more involved internally, right? Make sure that everything's pointing in the right direction. And I'm sure that, give it another few months, I'll be like, I need to be external. I need to,
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely resonate with that. Yeah. I mean, like even with the folks, the best intentions, like the best people, like it left to their own devices, they will on their own unintentionally start rowing in like opposing directions. Like just give it enough time.
Correct. And it's not that they're not good at what they do. It's not like it's just that like like there constantly needs to be strategic direction. Mm-hmm. And without that, people, like you said, people go opposite directions. Right.
Do you have any sense of imposter syndrome? Like with how far you've come and like where you are today, do you feel any sense of that?
Not really, not anymore. I did for a while, but not anymore.
Increase that confidence.
Shit, you got to increase that confidence, baby. No, I mean, I think like, yeah, I mean, I think that it's like, especially if you're young when you're doing this, like it's very easy. It's very easy to develop that. I think anybody that doesn't develop that, like in their early 20s, if they're building this stuff in their early 20s, is lying. I mean, for us, I mean, we raised our Series A. I was 23, right? And so like, yeah, I mean, you definitely end up with that sense. I think the best way out of it is to continue to grow, right? And for the company to continue to do well. And as the company has continued to do well over time, you start to see a trend where, again, if it's like a bunch of rocket ships going up, some of them will kind of sputter or slow down, and like you're left and there's fewer, rocket ships, right, that make it to that altitude. And I think like as you continue to look around and see that, it's like, oh shit, okay, like I'm still going. Like, there's no like, there's no, I don't know, there's no imposter syndrome. There shouldn't be the imposter syndrome. It's like, yeah, we're still going. And I don't know, at least for me, like growing out of it was the only way to get out of it.
Yeah. I sense myself slowly edging out of it. Like I'm 26 now, but like, boy, that imposter syndrome was pretty rough. Still definitely have it. But yeah, I mean, as like with continued growth, I can feel it slowly ebbing away, almost too slow to notice.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. It's been like wonderful having you on, hearing about all your adventures, like covered a lot of different topics, and I think a lot of this stuff would have been really helpful for me to hear, 5 years ago, earlier on in the founder journey. And that's the goal of this podcast, to help, young founders looking around the corner to know what's next, and anyone looking to chase their dreams to like hear about the nuts and bolts of how it works. And I think we did a good job uncovering a lot of that today. It was so great having you on, Chris.
Good to see you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.